am Eric, and welcome back to Learn Design with Eric. If you like what you've been seeing here, I'd like you to like and subscribe to my channel for regular graphic design content. And I've also created a private Facebook group if you'd like to connect with me directly, and the details are in the description below. So today's topic is line, and a line is formed when two or more dots are connected. In a vector drawing program like Adobe Illustrator, you can make a line simply by clicking in one place and then again in another, and the program automatically draws the line between them. So vertical lines, of course, would move up and down only, and horizontal lines are parallel to the horizon, so they're going to move right and left. And of course, diagonal lines are lines that have any sort of slope or slant. And then you can create a zigzag line by making a combination of horizontal, vertical, and diagonal lines. Curved lines change direction gradually. When I was a kid in school, I would often find myself sitting there just bored out of my mind in a lecture in one or more of my classes, and then I'd just start drawing with the black Uniball pen that I had on hand. And I'd use a technique called cross-hatching, and this technique uses a whole bunch of lines, and you draw kind of real fast, and basically create almost like a texture or a pattern with the black pen, which gives you the illusion of a shade which isn't really present. Like normally if you draw with a pencil, you might use darker lines on the edges, and then you'd smudge with your finger or with a smudging tool to create that shade. But with obviously a black pen, you can't really do this. I mean, depending on the type of ink you use, you can actually create that shade with some smudging tools and things, but with a standard black ballpoint pen, that's not really possible. And so you use a technique called cross-hatching to create those little lines which create that kind of effect. And I've created some specific examples of that I actually drew for this video, and I will show you those right here. Now, one of my favorite artists, MC Escher, also uses this technique a lot, but unfortunately due to copyright I cannot show any of his art here. So I've linked his website in the description below, so you can check out some of his stuff if you're not super familiar with it. I'm sure most of you have seen the ones where it's like a hand drawing another hand, or like the staircase that goes up and down and all around and kind of seems to twist in and on itself. It's pretty cool. So lines can be short in length or very long. They can be thin in stroke or thickness, which is the same thing, stroke or thickness. Strokes are typically measured in points while you're on a vector program like Illustrator, or even in a program like InDesign. But if you're in a raster program, depending on the raster program, Photoshop does both things. You can have a stroke thickness, but it's really, if you zoom all the way in and you see the little individual pixels, any stroke that you make in Photoshop is really going to be, unless it stays as a vector, is really going to be measured in pixels at that point. And so the thickness of your stroke would be measured in pixels, so it'd be 1, 2, 3, and so on. And they're kind of used interchangeably, points and pixels, because they both refer to that same 72 pixels per inch measurement that is used in graphic design in programs like Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, and the like. So lines, of course, can have, be super smooth, like what you'd see if you just drew 2 points in Illustrator and the program connected it. But they can also be rough in character, or they can be kind of irregular in shape. So they can start thick and go thin, kind of like what you'd see if you drew with an old calligraphy pen. Or in a newer program like Illustrator, you can also use these cool brush templates to create your own strokes or lines that have kind of unique look. They may have texture, they may have kind of look like a paintbrush drew it. So there's all kinds of things you can do with lines. And one of the most famous curved lines is actually the Fibonacci Spiral. So you guys probably have seen this before. It's like what's on a shell, kind of creates this, and the galaxy is actually the same thing. So this is the Fibonacci spiral is defined by the golden ratio. And the golden ratio is approximately 1.618 to 1 ratio. So it's 1.618 this way to 1, or, you know, of course you could stand it up vertically as well. But generally it's horizontal. So to construct a golden ratio, which is kind of fun to do if you haven't done it before, is you just literally draw a square. It has to be a perfect square. Divide the square equally with a vertical line down the center, and then you draw a line from the bottom of that square up to the upper right corner, and then you take that line and you just let it fall over until it lays totally flat. It's still connected to the bottom of that vertical line, and then you finish off the square by drawing around. And that's essentially how you create a, you know, Fibonacci square, or a golden rectangle. And then you can draw that Fibonacci spiral by basically going around that. Anyway, I'll go into this more in another video with the golden ratio and the Fibonacci spiral and how that applies to graphic design, because it's a little bit more complex than I'm going to do right here. But anyway, I just wanted to show you a little bit about lines, and I wanted to thank you for watching, and I will be back next week for more on Learn Design with Eric.